Okay, we're going to turn on the sequence. We can either say on here, or we can pull the fader down and then back up. These are auto start, auto stop, auto stop. So as soon as we leave 0, it turns on automatically into cue number 1. And we see that playing back. Cue number 1 was green on the back curtain. Okay, we'll hit go. It advances us to the next cue in 0 count because we haven't changed the fade time. The lights turn yellow and they point downstage edge of the stage. If we ever reach the end of a sequence, by default, these sequences will loop. So if I'm at Q2, which my last cue, I hit go again, it'll automatically loop back to cue number 1. They are moving at 0 count, which is kind of fast. So let's add some basic fade times to these cues. So we're going to turn off executor number 2. Hit the off button there. Again, you can open up the cue list however you like. You can either click the grid here and it will just pop up. You can go to your cues view and select that executor, which is what I'm going to do. Or you could hit edit and touch that executor and it would also pop up the cue list for that. Okay. Excuse me. We want to deal with changing the fade time here. So there's 2 ways I can do that. I can either select the cell. It's not doing it. Hold on. All right. If you want to do it the first way, you can open that window by clicking on the header here. Or sorry, not the header, the grid. All right, and you'll notice when I do that, as opposed to going through the actual cue list, when I click on this grid and it pops up here, my encoders also change to be functions of that executor. If I click on the name for Q1 here, so now my encoders would be dealing with changing things about cue number 1. I find that this is kind of a long-handed way to do this, but it is a way, so I'll show you. So right now my encoders here are mapped to my trigger time, my mode, and a looping mode. And just like we had in our layout view, I have multiple different levels or pages of these things I can change. So it's right here, it says basics 1 of 3 under the control tab. If I click that, it moves to fade delay 2 of 3. So now my encoders are mapped to my fade and delay times. Click it again, and it's going to go to like the command section, which we're not going to deal with. So if we're here in fade and delay, I can actually use my encoders to either click the box or move the encoder to change this fade time. That's kind of long-handed since we're on the PC. So for us, the easiest way is just to come up here in the grid and right-click in the cell we want to change and then type it in. What we want to do is we're looking to change the fade time of Q1 to 4 seconds. So I'm just going to click in the box here, right-click, 4. You have day, hour, minute, second, and frames down here. If you don't put in any information, it's going to default to seconds because most fade times are going to be in seconds. Well, you're wondering maybe why days is in here. Well, if you're dealing with an architectural project, maybe you have a queue that takes days to complete. I've certainly used one that took at least 12 hours to complete in an outdoor venue where we were trying to move certain lights and they would pan throughout the day to stay out of the sun so that the sun wasn't shooting down the lens into the light burning things. So you do have that sometimes, not often. Seconds is what it's going to default to. So we'll just put in 4 and hit please, which changes our fade time for Q1 here to 4 seconds. Okay, for Q2, we're going to click that fade box and we're going to type in 6. So now Q1 has a fade time of 4 and Q6 has a fade time of 6. So So let's see what that did. We come over here and we just hit go. On this executor, it will activate Q1, which should take 4 seconds to complete. So we hit go and we look, and the lights take 4 seconds to fade in and tilt up and change green. Hit go again. This next queue is going to take 6 seconds, and you can see the status on the queue list here as it goes. Okay, so that's fade times. You're going to change that to however long you want it to take for those queues to perform their actions. Okay, let's turn off number 2. Another time that we deal with, another basic queue time that we would deal with is a delay time. A delay time is going to delay that queue for a certain amount of seconds from when you execute it. So if I was to put delay time on Q1 of 1 second and I hit go into Q1, it's going to wait 1 second from when I press go and then take whatever fade time that queue has. So let's just look at that real quick. For us, for Q1, we're going to set a delay time of 1 second. So here I come to delay box for Q1, right click, type in 1. And for Q2, I'm going to put a delay time of 3. So delay, right click that box, put in 3. So now I have a delay time of 1 for Q1 and 3 for Q2. The way that these interact is the fade time is how long the queue takes. So I put a delay time of 1 second and a fade time of 4 seconds on Q1. What that means is when I click go on Q1, it's going to wait 1 second from when I press go, then it's going to execute that queue in 4 seconds. They don't overlap each other, they're separate things. So the delay happens first and then the fade happens. Q2, it would wait 3 seconds from when I hit go and then execute the queue in 6 seconds. So from start to finish of me pressing the go button and that queue being complete would actually be 9 seconds. It would be 5 seconds for the first one. So they add on to each other. All right, so we'll just look at how that looks real quick. We're going to hit go here. It's going to wait 1 second, then it's going to execute in 4 seconds. If I hit go again, this time it's going to wait 3 seconds and then execute the queue in 6 seconds. Cool. All right, let's turn that off. Turn off executor 2. The other thing that we have in here is our trigger. So that is telling us what action has to be performed for this queue to execute itself. The default is go, meaning that I have to press the go button. Okay. So that's just me manually pressing go, and then it looks at the fade and delay times and executes based on that. There's a couple of other different triggers that you may be familiar with from LCD. The first one is follow. So to change the trigger, I can just right click in the box here, or if I'm in the edit mode, I come back to 1 of 3, basics 1 of 3, and I can change that here in the encoders. For me, I'm just going to click in the boxes here. So for Q1, we're going to change what are we going to change this to? We're going to use follow for this. So we right click. These are the different trigger options: go, time, follow, a sound, BPM, and time code. I've rarely used the last 3, but they can be used. For us, we're going to go to follow. So if you remember back to LCD on the ETC console, follow would mean that the next queue would follow in a certain amount of seconds automatically after the last queue went. So if I had a follow of 15 on a queue, I would press go, Q1, let's say go, and it would take its fade time, and it would also be waiting 15 seconds from when that queue completes. So after the fade time is done, follow would go immediately after that. Let me just check something real quick here. All right, we're also going to change Q2 to a follow. What we've essentially done here is created a forever automatic looping queue list, because each queue is going to follow after the next one. So when I hit go, what's going to happen? We hit go, the queue delays, fade time goes. As soon as all of that is complete, it automatically follows to the next queue. So it's waiting for the delay and the fade time to be done, and then immediately triggering the next queue. You can see the process up here. Delay is done, fade is done. We see the orange countdown for the trigger of follow. So all of that is happening in that order. And it just loops forever because I have follows on both queues. All right, let's turn that off. Because on the MA, there is a different type of follow. On the ETC, you would type in a follow time of certain amount. So a follow of 0 would be what we just did, an automatic follow. On this console, we have a separate type of follow called a time trigger. So let's go to Q1 here, and we're going to change the trigger time of Q1 back to go. So I have to press go for that one to happen. And then for Q2, we're going to select time trigger. All right, once we change the trigger to time, it automatically pops up with a number in this next column of trigger time. And default is 1. We're going to set it to 7. So right click in that box and put 7. So what I've done here is a time trigger is basically a timed follow. So what's going to happen here is I've put a time trigger of 7 on this. This does not care what the fade and delay times are. It is the time, the amount of time that has to pass from when I trigger this queue or when I trigger the queue before it until it executes. So it's not going to wait for your fade and delay like follow would. So what's going to happen here is if I press go on Q1, it's going to wait 1 second. It's going to execute in 4 seconds. Now, it's not going to immediately follow to Q2 because I have a time trigger, not a follow. So the cumulative time of Q1 is 5 seconds because I have a 1 second delay and a 4 second fade time. This queue is set to a time trigger of 7. So there's actually going to be a gap of 2 seconds before this queue even does anything. So let's hit go and just watch. So delay for 1 second, fade for 4 seconds. That is complete. It still has 2 seconds left to the time trigger. Then the delay happens, so it's waiting even longer, and then fade time in 6 seconds. So from pressing go, it waited 1 second. It executed Q1 in 4, so that's 5 seconds total. There was 2 seconds left before this trigger time to 7, so it waited 2 seconds. It waited an additional 3 seconds because I have a 3 second delay on it, and then it went in 6. So that's a very complicated set of times there. You normally would not be doing that. If I wouldn't need a delay time if I'm using a time trigger, obviously, because they're essentially the same thing, but automatic. But just to demonstrate how it works, that's how those interact with each other. And it takes practice with that. But with the time triggers and the follows, I can actually automate a queue list if I know how to time it out right with fade delays and trigger times. Okay, so that's basic queue timing. Next lab, we'll go into some more advanced queue timing, but that's the basics: fade and delay and the trigger, either a follow or time or a go for most situations.